Um, check everything. All right, everything looks good. All right, we took a little bit of a break, so I did want to kind of hit the ground running today, and talk about. I was listening to something today, and one of the things the lady said, and it was really about something else. And normally that's how I get a lot of my topics. I listen to something that has nothing to do with Ascension, and they'll say a nugget of something. I'm like, oh, that's kind of interesting. And they were talking about a TV show, and they said you might have a good concept, but if everyone jumps off the show before you can get to the point, or you lose everybody in trying to do what you want to do, and no one's going to kind of see it through to the end, right? No one's going to be waiting around anymore. Everyone's going to be everyone's going to be gone. And that was one of the things that because Ascension does shift. And I think when it starts to shift, it bothers a lot of us, right? It bothers the human consciousness in all of us when it starts to shift, because we're not ready for the shift. We don't understand the shift. We don't know why it's shifting to the point where it's not fun. All of a sudden the realities we wanted aren't there, and we're getting ones we really didn't want, and we don't know why we're in the ones we're in, and it stops being a fun endeavor for a while. Even though there's still some fun to be had in it, it's not what we thought it was going to be. And a lot of people, I don't want to say they drop off, because you can't really drop out once you start Ascension, but you can kind of delay it a bit. You can really make the process miserable. And one thing about Ascension, we agree to all this before we reincarnate in. So we reincarnate in, we've already agreed to go through our Ascension process in the physical body. Not everyone has agreed to that. So not everyone in your world will go through Ascension the same time you do, and some won't go through it at all. Some will transition through death and come back in a different body and ascend in that body. So just because you're doing it doesn't mean everyone in your circle is going to do it. Normally they're not. Normally you're going to be the one in the circle doing it. And then your circle's going to shift, because the frequency of them and the frequency of you is not going to be compatible forever. And then, they're going to be out, and you're going to then go on and continue your journey. And that's the part of the journey that we start to balk on. And I talk a lot on this channel about the things we start to balk on. And the things that we get to, and we're like, oh, I don't like that part. Oh, I don't want to do that one. That one's not fun. That one is not one I signed up for. Because we get through the fourth dimensional awakening process. And, all right, hopefully that. Sorry about that. I'll cut that out on the YouTube restream. So if you don't want to go through that, I'll edit that out. Hopefully we fixed it. I don't know. Technology has not been my friend in 2025, that's for sure. All right, where was I at? When we start off, and people will talk about it, it's a light, fluffy phase of Ascension. Everyone loves it. You're seeing bright colors. Everything is beautiful. You start to feel the flow that you've never felt before. You start to realize how miserable human experiences can be, and you want something different, and you start really embracing that, right? You start really getting into that, and but it's almost like you're going to everyone who when you go to college, you experience all different things. You meet different people, you see things in a different light, because it's not the same way you were brought up. A lot of times you get expanded, your horizons are expanded. And the fifth dimension is a lot of that, but it's just expanding it on a soul level. You're expanding your horizons. You've allowed your soul to enter more into the body. You're seeing things in a different way. You start noticing things in your field. You start feeling more clairvoyant. You start to pick up on the subtle things that were always there, but we couldn't see them. Our human can't see them. So you start feeling and processing all this stuff. And you start really understanding that, our human experience is not what we thought it was. It's not all there is. It's really just a facade of why we're really here. And when you start stripping it away, there is a freedom in that And there's also a frightening part of ascension in that, because once you start to strip it away, you start to realize that all of a sudden everything in your human experience has to start to change. But if you don't have that beginning phase, you're not going to want to continue to go down the road. It's kind of like if you go on a date with a person and you don't like them, right? You're not going to go out on a second date with the person. It's just not going to happen. But if you have a good experience, you might be more apt to do it again. It's the same thing with Ascension. If you don't enjoy the beginning of it, you're not hanging out for the rest of it. You're gonna drop off before you get to the real part of the storyline, where you actually have to start reconstructing your life. Now, a lot of people at this point, how do you hang in during this point? How do you keep going when you're here? How do you stop wanting to go back, right? And one thing about Ascension is you kind of start to grenade everything that was before it. Right? Sometimes we do it intentionally because we see how unhappy we really are in it. Because as soon as you start down your process, you start down your Ascension journey, start down that path, everything in the human journey that's not aligned with where you are in that moment starts to be so annoying and leave it. Let's try that one. Alright, we're going to try that one and see how that works. At least I'm not losing my audio. I am forgetting where I'm at. When we get to certain points, we have to reconstruct a lot of stuff. But as we go along the way, we got to get spoon-fed. A lot of people want it to go faster. Why can't it go faster? Why can't we move faster? We're not designed to go through the process faster. Our whole body has to be rewritten with new codes. We have to be upgraded. Our body has to be upgraded. We just can't throw ourselves into ascendant realities. Our body can't support them. It would be too much for us. It's kind of like I've done a lot of videos on what happens when the veils dissolve too fast. A lot of people will call them, in the human consciousness, people who are mentally off, or they're seeing things that aren't there, or they're hearing voices that aren't there. Because the veils they go too fast. It can't be processed that fast. Your body has to upgrade over a linear time, whether we like it or not. We're not programmed to do it quicker than that. We're just not able to do it quicker than that. And because of that, we go through in kind of stages. And there is a compassion to that we don't have to destroy everything all at once. But over time, a lot of it gets chipped away. Because we start to see glaringly, like I guarantee you, if you look at your reality now, you will notice things that don't fit. They don't fit with where you want to be. They don't fit with how you want to interact with people. The people don't fit. You don't want to be there. And there's just a lot of things that just are not aligned anymore. And because your frequency is shifting, you can see them. And you can't unsee them. Once you see them, you cannot unsee them. You cannot go back and try to see something else. You can only see them. And until you try to align them, it just gets worse and worse and worse and worse. And a lot of us will kind of hold on to some realities for a long time, not wanting to see them, not wanting to try to shift them, and then they kind of collapse on top of us. And we all have that happen to us, especially when we start having to reconstruct. In the beginning, we don't have to do much. We just have to experience the feeling of what people would call fifth dimensional reality. Even you get some of this in the fourth dimension, where you feel that freedom and you feel the love and you feel the joy and bliss of your soul and doing things from your soul. And you see how backwards human realities are and how frustrating it is to watch humans construct things. Even though at the time we're not starting to even look at how we constructed things yet, because we really don't want to see that. We don't want to have to experience that yet. So we're like, I don't want to look at that. I don't want to look at how I constructed that. I don't really want to see that yet. But it's hard to continue to build human realities, even though for a while we tried to, because it's the only thing we know how to build. We haven't unlocked the knowledge of building soul line realities yet, so we keep trying to build the old stuff. And because we keep trying to build the old stuff, it doesn't flow like we want it to. We have to go do realities we don't want to do. We might have to reconnect with family we don't want to reconnect with to clear ancestral karma that we have to clear. Where we wouldn't go do that. But if we're forced to go do that, then we go do that because we don't see another place to go. These are all things your universe is going to push you toward to get you to the fastest way through it. Our human does not want to go the fastest way through it. I'll guarantee you. Okay, the human does not care about the fastest way. Our human cares about the most comfortable way. And your human's going to try to map out the most comfortable way it can go. And if that is avoiding certain people, avoiding certain situations, avoiding certain, even if I go back to the college analogy, avoiding certain professors, avoiding certain things you didn't want to go to, avoiding certain, people, you're going to just avoid it. Our human is an expert at avoidance. Okay, it can avoid the hell out of anything for decades if it wants to. It can avoid anything. And because of that, we don't put ourselves in any reality to clear anything, right? We just and because of that, we keep recreating realities that are based on the same belief set we're not clearing. So that's why it all begins to be the same. It all starts to blend the same. It all feels the same because we're not changing anything. We don't have the capacity to. We just keep reliving it out again and again and again and again. And because some of this stuff did happen, even though we never want to forget that we're also clearing over multi-dimensions at the same time. Different versions of us. A lot of this is clearing, stuff that happened when we were younger. And that we just carry forward and we keep doubling down on that because we keep recreating realities to reinforce those beliefs. And we just keep doubling down on it and doubling down on it. And we do that and do that and do that. So your soul is going to take you down a path to see, A, how committed are you to keep going? But when you've torched everything behind you, it's almost like that old action trope where they're walking away and there's something blowing up behind them and, they're walking slowly away in their bomber jacket because that was just cool as shit back in the day, and every movie has that action scene in it, the slow walk away from the bomb. Whereas, we kind of let it burn and we're running very quickly away, ducking behind things, just trying to get away from it. But we can't really go back to it because we've kind of already set a flame to it. Or if we didn't light the match ourselves, our universe lit the match for us, because it kind of wants to, in a sense, isolate you from that stuff. So you don't want to keep playing in it. It is kind of human realities do have they're all cult based. They're kind of addiction and realities in a sense. There's a lot of drama. There's a lot of lure to those realities in the beginning, and that's why we do them. That's why we're part of them, because we want to be in that lure. We want to be in that. So we kind of try to stay in that for a while, even though we can see through them, and that's why it's never our job to pull anyone out of those, and we couldn't do it if we wanted to, because as long as it still works for anybody in any capacity, no one's going to choose to go through Ascension if their human realities work in any way, shape, or form. If it's just working 1%, they'll stay there because they know it, they understand it, their beliefs set are set in that, and as long as their beliefs are set in that, they're not going to move, they're not going to shift, they're not going to go to something else because they truly believe that is the only way. And for a while, as we go through our ascension, so do we. That's when we start to butt up against the problems we start to have. Our humans start to have issues with what we have to go do. It starts to have issues with having to leave all the stuff we created behind because we feel like we worked hard for that stuff. We worked hard for 30, 40, 50, how many years you worked for it, and now you got to leave it all behind. Kind of, and like I said, do the slow walk, the cool slow walk away from it. And let it burn, because you can't hold any of it in a sense anymore because it's not aligned. It's not created from any template that's not corrupted, because everything our human makes, it is corrupted, it is tainted, it is not something that's going to sustain. We know that, we feel that, and that's why it has to go, right? So we have to say goodbye to it. We have to say goodbye to all of it, and in saying goodbye to all of it, we get in so many different. We paint ourselves in a lot of different corners because we try to continue to do it the same way. That's why a lot of times you get stripped of everything. Your identity, money, all of it has to go because we try to recreate the same thing. We just keep doubling down on the same thing. till we start to understand that it's not about these things. You know, money is not valued in soul-aligned realities. Though you will get it when you need it, it's not valued to the same sense it is in human realities. Your presence is valued in soul-aligned realities. Your presence is not valued in human realities. It never will be valued in human realities. That's why we start to, you know, have a hard time having relationships with people in a human consciousness. And that's a whole other thing we have to learn. Tolerance to be able to do that, and understanding to be able to do that, because they're so different from us. And it becomes so different from where we come from. Where we come from is different. The aspect that's doing your decision making is different. And you start to understand, but it takes a lot of watching a reality build up, collapsing, going to another one, watching it collapse, ending up in realities you did not want to fucking be in, to really understand how it starts to work and why you have to be there and why this really is the quickest way. No, it is not the easiest way. Your human wanted it to be an easy, most comfortable way to avoid everything and just be able to kind of sidestep everything. It's not that way. And that is when we start to feel like that's when we start to feel that bait and switch. You know, like we started out feeling this great way. We started out feeling this happiness and love and unification within ourselves. And all of a sudden it shifts and we don't feel that anymore. We feel frustrated, we feel agitated. We feel like everyone in the human world is telling us we're nuts, and we're beginning to maybe believe that because the new realities aren't coming online the way we wanted them to. Because we want them to look like we want the new soul-aligned realities to look like our human realities did, because that's what we expected. You know, we expect to paint the same thing again. You know, we expect the same thing. We want it to look similar but better. We want an upgraded house, an upgraded car. You know, we want it to look better. Yet it's still going to be sort of the same, but upgraded. We want just nicer stuff. But we don't understand at the time that the stuff is not important. But it's important to our human, so it becomes important to our journey. And it becomes important to how others view us, because that's how human realities work. So no matter where you are, if you're still in the phase where everything is beautiful, everything is great, you really haven't had to change much yet, you will get to a time you're going to have to. You know, you're going to get to the time you're going to have to change something. If not, then you're avoiding what's right there, and you can't avoid it forever. Okay? I've seen people, and I did the same thing, drag it out, try to pretend like it's not collapsing, try to pretend like all of a sudden things you used to enjoy you're not enjoying anymore. People you used to like to talk to, you don't want to talk to them anymore. Different ways you used to support yourself. You feel like you're either getting pushed out of the job or you just don't like the job anymore. There's a lot of signs realities are closing out. And in beginning stages of our ascension, the first maybe 3 to 4 years, we don't really see that. We might feel it, but we kind of avoid it. Then after so many years in that, you start to see it years before it's closing out. You know, you see it a long time before then. You're like, oh, this is closing out. I see all the signs are there. You know, you can start to see the roadmap that the reality is starting to close out. And you kind of know that. So then you kind of start preparing yourself for that. As you go through your journey, don't think because it's not what you thought it was that it's not soul aligned. Because it doesn't look like your human realities, it's not highest aligned in the moment you're in it. Now, that doesn't mean we're going to stay highest aligned. You know, we're probably not going to stay in that reality forever, because we're going to have to go to a different reality where that is then going to be highest aligned. Our highest aligned realities change because we change. You know, we have this other misconception that because it's highest aligned, or this is a soul aligned reality, that it doesn't decompose. You know, it's going to not change. This is the one I'm in. When that's just the one that's highest aligned right now, you're going to continue to shift and change and go through your ascension upgrading processes, and your realities have to change with that. Because your body frequency has to raise with that, and you can't support your body frequency in an old reality. You know, you can't set in human realities you created and expect to live an ascended life. It's not going to work like that. So it's important to not kind of lose our... I think faith is right. I don't really like that word. It's a very weak word to me. Faith and hope. You give up on a lot of those during your ascension process. You can't live on faith and hope alone. You got to actually do something. If you're not doing anything, faith and hope aren't really going to help you. You know, those are the words of the weak in a sense. You know, they're not going to get you where you want to go. We have to actually start to do stuff. We have to actually start to shift our reality ourselves. We can't just wait around for the reality to shift, because I will promise you, you're not going to like how it's going to shift. If you wait for your universe to do it, in the beginning we can, because we're gaining trust our universe is going to take care of us, right? So in the beginning, we don't even realize we have to shift it. We're kind of in that what the book The Secret talked about. Just believe in it and think about it and create it in your mind and it'll be there. For a while, we can start to play with our realities like that and play with our energy field like that, but there comes a time when that's not enough anymore. You have to physically see and do what you feel like you have to see and do. You know, you can't just wait around and say, oh, I'm just going to think about it. I'm just going to feel about it. I want to think positive about it, and all of a sudden it's just going to happen. You know, if you feel that I'm supposed to go in this place and work here for just 3 or 4 months, and there's no permanence to it. You know, sometimes we get stuck in we will go back when it gets rough. It will get rough just because our human's going to fight it, and that's when it gets rough. You know, it's not so much the journey. If we look back on the journey, I doubt you would think the parts you identified as rough are really that rough. But our human's going to identify them as rough because it goes against what our human would want to do. You know, and humans do like the permanence of a reality, even though technically nothing's permanent. But they might go into a job thinking, oh, I'll be here. I can remember things doing that. Oh, I'll be here 2 or 3 years, and I'll go do something else. Well, you might go into a place knowing you might be there for 3 weeks, and that's all you're supposed to do there is touch certain souls here, you know, get activated in a certain way here, and then you move on to something else. You know, the realities don't last as long sometimes that you might think they're going to, sometimes as much as you want them to. Because there might be one where you really want it to keep going, but you can start to see the chinks in it. You can start to see how, I don't think this is going to work. You start to see how, I don't know. I don't know if this one's got the legs I thought it had in the beginning, because I think everyone's on a different page. Because there's a lot of differences in not just human consciousness and ascended consciousness. That's, you know, you're basically on different planets at that point. Just ascended consciousness and someone else's ascended consciousness. If someone else is in a different phase, if someone else wants to go experience something else, then there's not much we can do about that. And just because you have maybe 2 people on an ascension journey, it doesn't mean still that you're going to be compatible with those people. And that's a hard thing for us to realize for a while, because we think we are going to be. You know, we think, it's not going to work. We're going to be totally compatible with anyone that's conscious. Right? It's all going to work out beautifully, and so many conscious people, and even though there's more conscious people and people coming into consciousness than ever before, there's still billions of people on the planet that are not, that are still in human realities completely asleep. That's a reality right now. You know, so the odds are you might be the only conscious person in your reality day to day, and you might be online with different groups or looking for different groups to find people what you feel like is more of a like consciousness, you know, but that still doesn't mean it's compatible consciousness. Just because it's not human consciousness doesn't mean it's compatible with where you are, or it's compatible with something you want to create. Because everyone, it's like when you talk about living heaven realities and living soul line realities, not everyone has that same vision of what that means. For someone, that might be backpacking around the world, and that's their version of heaven and it being an ascended reality. For somebody else, it might be living off the grid in the mountains, and that's their version of living in an ascended reality and doing what they feel they're supposed to do to construct that reality. For somebody else, it might be, you know, going and living at the beach, and that's their version. Someone else, it might be doing seminars or doing a wellness center, and that's their version of what they're supposed to do. You're not all going to have the same vision, and you're not supposed to. If everyone has the same vision and is doing the exact same thing, you're really not spreading out. Different things are going to attract different people to consciousness in general. That's why everyone that's coming into consciousness, everyone's not going to look exactly the same, you know, because you're going to attract people that are going to resonate with how the energy you put out, or, you know, you're going to be able to get into places maybe other people can't get into because of, you know, the area you live in, the color of your skin, whatever it is. We all aren't looking exactly the same, and we're all not going to want to do exactly the same things. It doesn't mean you might not have a similar frequency for a while, or you might not still want to create things, be able to create some things together, but sometimes even long term trying to build with people that aren't conscious gets tricky because they might not have the same vision. They might want to live in California, and that's not where you want to go. You want to go to Oregon. So don't be surprised if even when you think, because in our human realities, if we found someone we were somewhat compatible with, we'd say, okay, we'll stay with these people forever. If we're just a little bit compatible, we can make it work. That's more the human mentality. When you go through vibrational realities and ascended realities and consciousness, and you kind of start to see that not everyone is the same vision of consciousness, not everyone has the same, and some people don't have the same commitment. Some people go through it at a different phase. If some people who might start it have small kids and they can't go through it as fast as people who don't have kids. And they might be in a different timeline than you. And, you might jump, not just like surpass or jump over them in a sense of they're slower, but they're doing something else. They're going down a different route. They're bringing in other souls that they're going to show them, how to live from a different consciousness. And you're going to go do something else. So even when you get to starting to reconstruct and you start looking at, okay, I've done a lot of clearing and I've done a lot of karma clearing, and we do a lot of that. A lot of this is clearing our karma. Maybe the first, so many years and years into Ascension, we've got to clear all our karma we created as human karma in this reality, and everything we created, multidimensionally. So we start to clear all our karma, and we get to a point where maybe that next reality is the one where I'm going to create something different, and I'm finally going to be able to get into what I thought I was going to get into, maybe 7 or 8 years ago, and maybe the next one will be that one. Because now I've kind of come through kind of a trial by fire through everything else. Don't be surprised when the people you thought, oh yeah, maybe we could create something, when you really start to look at it or spend time with them, yeah, maybe that's not going to work either. Just because everyone is not human, just because when you're trying to have realities with humans, that's harder because you can't really create anything. When you try to create something with people who are conscious or maybe seem more enlightened than others, or maybe more enlightened than you still can see that maybe long term it's not going to work because their vision, your vision just aren't the same vision. It doesn't mean either vision will not be created. They might just not be created together. So, all right, I'm going to check my chat really quick. I think I've kind of exhausted that one. All right, luckily the camera held, so. Oh my gosh, I'm telling you, it has been a year for electronics. I think I need to just upgrade everything I have at this point. And don't be surprised when that happens too, because when your field gets in a certain frequency, you start to lose, a lot of your electronics start to go bonkers on you, because you almost start to short them out. So, all right. I'm going to sign off there. I'll see everyone next time. I'm going to try to get back on a weekly schedule with these streams. Either go Thursday to Saturday. I haven't decided yet. So we'll see. All right. Bye.